You're too quiet, Adebayo. If I were you, I'd be showing off by now, Taiwo would say, laughing. But Adebayo remained resolute. He knew that boasting too early could invite trouble. His father had once told him, "Let your success be so loud that it speaks for itself." Yet, keeping quiet in a city where people only valued what they could see was not easy. In the bustling streets of Lagos, where ambition runs high and success is often flaunted, lived Adebayo. He wasn't born into wealth, and every day was a struggle. Yet, inside him burned a desire to make something great of his life. His dreams were big, far bigger than anyone around him could comprehend. He saw beyond the narrow streets and crowded markets. His vision was to own a business that would someday dominate the city, providing for his family and lifting them out of poverty. But Adebayo had learned early in life that not everyone shared his dreams or supported his ambition. The neighborhood he grew up in was filled with those who believed success was a distant dream reserved for a lucky few. His friends, Taiwo and Segun, often mocked him. Taiwo was the loud one, always flaunting his small wins on social media. Every little promotion, every new gadget was shared with the world. He had no understanding of why Adebayo remained silent, working quietly on his big plans. You're too quiet, Adebayo. If I were you, I'd be showing off by now, Taiwo would say, laughing. But Adebayo remained resolute. He knew that boasting too early could invite trouble. His father had once told him, "Let your success be so loud that it speaks for itself." Yet, keeping quiet in a city where people only valued what they could see was not easy. And so, Adebayo went about his life, working late into the night, planning, strategizing, all while his friends laughed at his apparent lack of progress. Little did they know, beneath the surface, Adebayo was preparing for something much bigger than anyone could have imagined. Adebayo's small but significant strides in business began to show results. He had secured a partnership with a local supplier, allowing him to get his goods at a discounted rate. This was a game changer for him. His profits started increasing, albeit slowly, but it was enough for him to notice the difference. His income, though still modest, was stable, and for the first time, he felt like his dreams weren't so far-fetched. But living in Lagos, a city where appearances mattered, was tough. Taiwo, who flaunted his latest car on social media, couldn't understand why Adebayo wasn't doing the same. The temptation to show his progress ate at Adebayo. One post could silence all the people who doubted him. Just one. But Adebayo remembered the wise words of his father. He hesitated. Taiwo's constant social media updates, showing off new watches, vacations, and dinners, drew praise and envy from their mutual friends. Taiwo had mastered the art of portraying success, even if he didn't have much to back it up. He always told Adebayo, "Bro, nobody will know you've made it unless you show them." Adebayo smiled and nodded each time Taiwo lectured him, but deep down, he felt uneasy. He knew there was truth in what Taiwo said, people in the city only valued what they could see. Adebayo began to wonder if his quiet approach was misguided. Maybe it was time to show the world what he had been working on. His business was growing, albeit slowly, and his first major deal had brought in more income than he had ever seen before. Wouldn't it be satisfying to shut up those who doubted him? But every time Adebayo was on the verge of announcing his success, something held him back. He remembered the stories his father used to tell him about the dangers of envy. Envy, his father would say, is like a shadow. It follows those who carry the light of success, but it can consume them if they are not careful. Adebayo knew that in a city like Lagos, where eyes were always watching, revealing too much too soon could invite trouble. One evening, after a long day of work, Adebayo sat in his one-room apartment, scrolling through Taiwo's latest post. It was a picture of Taiwo at an upscale restaurant, holding up a glass of champagne, the caption reading, "Living the life you dream of." Hundreds of comments flooded in, praising Taiwo's success. Adebayo's fingers hovered over the screen. He could post a photo of the contracts he had just signed with his new clients. He could show off the growing stock in his small shop, the increasing number of customers, the bank alert showing his latest earnings. The thought tempted him, but once again, he hesitated. Instead, he chose to remain silent. Something inside him told him it wasn't time yet. Weeks turned into months, and Adebayo's decision to remain quiet started paying off in ways he couldn't have imagined. His business had grown steadily, gaining a reputation for quality and reliability. He had built a small but loyal customer base, and his clients began recommending him to others. The progress was gradual, but it was consistent. Adebayo kept his head down, focusing on perfecting his craft, delivering excellent service, and reinvesting his profits into the business. One evening, Adebayo received a call from a potential client he had been trying to secure for months. They were interested in working with him on a large project that could elevate his business to a whole new level. This was the breakthrough he had been waiting for. It was the type of deal that could change his life forever. His heart raced with excitement. But even in this moment of triumph, Adebayo knew he had to tread carefully. He was tempted to share the good news with his friends, especially Taiwo, who had been flaunting his supposed success all over the internet. But Adebayo's instincts told him otherwise. He remembered his father's words, "Let your success speak for itself." This was just the beginning, and if he played his cards right, there would be plenty of time to celebrate later. For now, Adebayo kept quiet, even as the excitement bubbled inside him. He finalized the deal in silence, knowing that soon, his success would speak so loudly that no one would be able to ignore it. As Adebayo's business quietly flourished, whispers began to circulate in his neighborhood. His close circle of friends, including Taiwo and Seigun, started noticing the subtle changes. Adebayo hadn't made any grand announcements, but people could see the results of his hard work. His shop was always busy, and he had upgraded his stock. He had even started dressing a little better, though still modestly. Taiwo, who had always been the loudest in the group, began to take note of Adebayo's quiet rise. One afternoon, Seigun, who had known Adebayo since childhood, approached him casually. "Adebayo, my guy, it looks like things are going well for you," Seigun said, flashing a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You've been keeping quiet, but we can all see that you're doing well. What's the secret?" Adebayo chuckled and brushed off the question. "No secret, Seigun. Just hard work and patience," he replied, not giving away too much. But Adebayo could sense the shift in the air. People were starting to pay attention, and with attention came jealousy. He knew that success in the city often attracted the wrong kind of people, those who wanted to bring you down simply because they couldn't stand to see someone else rise. Seigun's words might have been friendly on the surface, but Adebayo could see the curiosity and envy lurking beneath them. As word of Adebayo's success spread quietly through the city, other local businessmen began to feel threatened. Some of them had been in the game longer than Adebayo, but they hadn't seen the same level of growth. They started to whisper about him, speculating on how he was managing to rise so quickly. Some even began to spread rumors, questioning whether his success was legitimate. Adebayo kept his head down, pretending not to notice the growing jealousy around him. But deep down, he knew that this was just the beginning. The more successful he became, the more enemies he would attract. Seigun, who had always been close to Adebayo, began to grow suspicious. Though Adebayo wasn't flaunting his success, it was becoming increasingly hard to ignore. Seigun, who had once supported Adebayo's dreams, now found himself feeling left behind. His own business ventures hadn't taken off the way Adebayo's had, and the quiet success of his friend began to gnaw at him. One evening, Seigun invited Adebayo for drinks at a local bar, pretending to be interested in catching up. But as the night wore on, the conversation turned to business. "So, Adebayo, what's really going on with you these days? You've been so secretive." "You can tell me, I won't say anything," Seigun said, a little too casually. Adebayo smiled, taking a sip of his drink before replying. "It's nothing, Seigun. I've just been working hard, that's all. There's no secret to it." But Seigun wasn't satisfied with that answer. He pressed further, asking about Adebayo's suppliers, his clients, and his business strategies. Adebayo, sensing the growing jealousy in Seigun, remained vague in his answers, carefully avoiding giving away too much. He knew that Seigun was fishing for information, and he wasn't about to reveal the details of his success to someone who might use it against him. As the night wore on, Adebayo grew more certain that even those closest to him could not be trusted with his success. He had learned a valuable lesson: the more you reveal, the more vulnerable you become. Saigon, on the other hand, left the bar that night feeling even more frustrated. He had hoped to uncover Adebayo's secret, but instead, he had left with more questions than answers. The jealousy that had been simmering inside him was now on the verge of boiling over. As Adebayo continued to grow his business, the pressure to share his achievements became harder to resist. One day, in a moment of excitement, he let his guard down. While talking to one of his colleagues, Say, he mentioned landing a major client who had doubled his profits in just a few weeks. It wasn't a big announcement, but it was enough to stir the curiosity of the wrong people. Say, known for his love of gossip, spread the news faster than Adebayo had expected. Within days, the entire neighborhood knew about Adebayo's latest success. The sudden attention brought a mix of admiration and envy. Some people congratulated him, while others began to grow resentful. Adebayo quickly realized the mistake he had made. By letting even a small detail slip, he had opened the door to unwanted attention. The peaceful, quiet life he had worked so hard to maintain was now under threat, and the green-eyed monsters were circling once more. The gossip Say had spread moved faster than Adebayo could have imagined. In a city like Lagos, where word of mouth held great power, it wasn't long before the entire business community was talking about his success. At first, Adebayo thought it might help attract new clients, but the attention quickly turned sour. His competitors, many of whom had overlooked him before, were now taking notice, and not in a good way. One morning, as Adebayo sat in his shop reviewing new stock orders, he received a call from a fellow businessman, Kunal, whose tone was unusually sharp. Adebayo, I heard you've been making moves lately. People are saying you've got some big deals lined up. Why haven't you mentioned any of this to us? Kunal asked, his voice laced with suspicion. Adebayo kept his tone calm, but inside, he felt the tension rising. There's not much to say, Kunal. I've just been working hard like the rest of you. But Kunal wasn't buying it. Well, we'll see how long that lasts, he replied coldly before hanging up. That phone call was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Adebayo started noticing a shift in the way people treated him. Vendors who had once been eager to work with him began pulling back. Some competitors undercut his prices, hoping to lure his clients away. Even his most trusted suppliers started giving him less favorable terms, citing increased demand from other clients. The city was turning against him. Adebayo realized that his slip-up with Say had set off a chain reaction. His success, once quiet and unnoticed, was now attracting both envy and sabotage. The more people talked about him, the harder it became to maintain the delicate balance he had worked so hard to create. One evening, as Adebayo walked through the busy streets of Lagos, he overheard a group of businessmen talking in hushed voices. They didn't see him as they spoke, but their words sent a chill down his spine. We need to do something about Adebayo. He's getting too powerful too quickly, one of them said. Adebayo realized then that the storm had truly begun to gather. The city's business elite saw him as a threat, and they were preparing to bring him down. He needed to act fast before things spiraled out of control. Not long after the rumors of Adebayo's success began spreading, strange things started happening at his shop. One night, after closing up, he returned home only to receive a frantic phone call from his assistant, Tunde. Oga, something don't happen, oh. Thieves don't break into the shop. Tunde's voice trembled on the other end. Adebayo rushed to the shop, his heart pounding. When he arrived, the sight before him was worse than he had imagined. His shop had been ransacked, shelves overturned, stock missing, the door left wide open. It was clear this wasn't a random burglary, it was targeted. Whoever had done this wasn't just after money, they wanted to send a message. In the days that followed, more incidents occurred. His delivery trucks were delayed mysteriously, causing him to miss key deadlines with clients. One of his suppliers suddenly dropped him without explanation, claiming they had found a better deal elsewhere. It was clear that someone, or several people, were deliberately trying to sabotage his business. Adebayo felt cornered, but he refused to show weakness. He knew that revealing his fear or anger would only feed his enemies. Instead, he quietly began investigating who was behind the attacks. Saigon was an obvious suspect, given the growing tension between them, but Adebayo had no proof. It was a game of shadows, and his enemies were playing it well. Adebayo stayed silent, not reacting publicly to the attacks. If they wanted to provoke him into making a mistake, they would have to try harder. He strengthened security at his shop and hired trusted staff to help him navigate through the storm. But deep down, he knew that things were about to get much worse. With the mounting pressure and the sabotage threatening to undo everything he had built, Adebayo knew he needed advice from someone with more experience. He decided to visit Baba Farouk, an old mentor who had guided him through difficult times in the past. Baba Farouk lived on the outskirts of the city, far from the noise and chaos of Lagos, in a quiet, unassuming house surrounded by tall trees and silence. When Adebayo arrived, Baba Farouk welcomed him warmly, offering him kola nuts and palm wine before they sat down to talk. Adebayo wasted no time explaining everything that had happened, the sabotage, the jealousy, and the growing threat from his competitors. Baba Farouk listened in silence, his eyes calm and thoughtful. After Adebayo finished, Baba Farouk sat back and stroked his grey beard. Adebayo, do you remember the story I told you about the great king who revealed his power too soon? Adebayo nodded, remembering the old folktale from years ago. Yes, Baba. The king who lost everything because he showed off his wealth before he had secured his kingdom. Baba Farouk smiled knowingly. That's right. You are much like that king, Adebayo. You have power, but you have revealed it too early. Now your enemies have seen your strength, and they seek to destroy it before it can grow any further. Adebayo bowed his head. I made a mistake, Baba. I let my success show too soon. Baba Farouk leaned forward. Success is like fire, my son. If it burns too brightly too soon, it attracts the attention of those who wish to put it out. But if you tend to it quietly, feeding it with care, it will grow into a flame that cannot be extinguished. Adebayo listened carefully, absorbing the wisdom in the old man's words. What should I do now? He asked. Baba Farouk stood and walked to a shelf, pulling down a small, dusty scroll. He handed it to Adebayo. You must learn the art of silence. Build your success in the shadows, and when it is strong enough, it will speak for itself. By then, it will be too late for your enemies to destroy it. Adebayo nodded, his resolve hardening. He knew what he had to do. After his visit to Baba Farouk, Adebayo returned to the city with a new plan. He stopped sharing details of his business with anyone outside his trusted circle. Even Taiwo and Sagan noticed the change. When they asked about his progress, Adebayo kept his answers vague and non-committal. He removed himself from the public eye, operating quietly and methodically. Behind the scenes, Adebayo worked harder than ever. He doubled down on his strategy, improving his product, strengthening his relationships with key suppliers, and securing deals that would allow him to expand without attracting attention. He no longer boasted about his wins, even in private conversations. The less people knew about his success, the better. Over time, the effects of his silence became apparent. His competitors, who had once been so eager to sabotage him, became confused. Without any visible signs of growth, they assumed that their efforts to bring him down had worked. Slowly, they began to turn their attention elsewhere. But while they were busy underestimating him, Adebayo's business was quietly thriving. His clients, impressed by his reliability and discretion, referred him to others. His network expanded, and soon he had more work than he could handle. Yet, through it all, Adebayo remained silent. He didn't flaunt his success, didn't post about it online, and didn't brag to his friends. His business was growing, but he made sure it grew under the radar. As Baba Farouk had predicted, success was beginning to speak for itself. The once constant chatter of his competitors had faded into the background, replaced by rumors of a mysterious businessman who was slowly but surely taking over the market. Adebayo smiled to himself. His fire was burning brightly, but only he knew just how strong it had become.